One of the interesting things I've found when debating and discussing nuclear energy for Australia is that a lot of the people who support the idea of nuclear energy, at least support the exploration of nuclear as an energy source here, also support coal, our existing baseline power. Matt Canavan, Keith Pitt, these sort of people hold both those positions. I want to catch up now with the Chief Executive of the New South Wales Mineral Council, Stephen Galilee, to discuss this issue further. Thanks for joining us, Stephen. You're obviously, with your organisation, strong supporters of coal. You have the biggest coal exporting port in the world up at Newcastle. So why would you also support the exploration of nuclear energy for Australia?
We support a range of different metals and minerals in New South Wales. We have coal mining members, we have metals mining members. We'd love to have some uranium mining members too. It's part of the energy mix. I mean, almost everything that we use every day comes out of the ground, and our energy needs are no different, whether it's renewable energy. Uranium is a feedstock into nuclear power. In New South Wales right now, it's legal to explore for uranium, but it's illegal to mine it if you find it, which is quite absurd. And there's also a ban on nuclear power in New South Wales under Cold War legislation that was passed when Ronald Reagan was president and when Germany was divided into two separate countries. So we think that that legislation should be updated and overturned, that uranium should be allowed to be mined in New South Wales if it's found, subject to the stringent planning laws that apply in New South Wales right now, and that removing the ban on nuclear power would also be a very positive step in that debate. Because ultimately, Chris, if we're going to get to net zero and we're going to meet those emissions reductions targets that our government is going to commit us to, we're going to need the technology to do it. And the main technologies that we're going to need to do it are essentially carbon capture and storage and nuclear power.
Yeah, and this is more than just a moot point, right? Because there's that federal ban on nuclear energy. As you mentioned, there are bans on exploitation of uranium resources in New South Wales. There are similar bans in other states. And there's stacks of this stuff around. Australia's probably got the world's greatest reserves. And the very first uranium mine in Australia is at Radium Hill in South Australia, but that's only 30 or 40 k's across the New South Wales border out there near Broken Hill. So there's plenty of exploring to be done. What interests me, though, is that uranium, too, would do the job in the future in our energy mix that coal does now. It's a base, it supplies chunky, reliable bits of baseload power, the very thing that we can't get from renewable energy.
That's exactly right. And that's why it needs to be part of this energy approach going forward. It needs to be part of the mix of technology that we're going to need to meet those emissions reductions targets that were being set. And nuclear power it's used worldwide. We are a major exporter of uranium to other countries that use nuclear power, particularly countries, European economies and other parts of the world that pride themselves on their low emissions policy positions that they've taken. So if they're able to do it, and we're signing up to the net zero emissions policy at Glasgow, then surely nuclear power needs to be part of this energy mix for us as well. We've got the uranium reserves, we know, here in Australia. As you've said, other states and territories around the country allow mining for uranium. In New South Wales, it's not allowed yet. And we do think that it should be allowed. And it's a One Nation MP. It's Mark Latham in the New South Wales Parliament that has been very vocal in pushing for this. He's introduced a bill into the Parliament, to his great credit. And we'd like to see that bill progressed and supported from the Parliament in New South Wales right across the political spectrum as part of the consensus that we're starting to see on emissions reductions policy here in this country.
Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chris.
Stephen Galilee there from the New South Wales Minerals Council. Yeah, we've got to avoid getting into a ridiculous situation in this country where we're powering the world with our coal exports, our gas exports and our uranium exports, but refusing to use any one of those three in this country. I know we're a long way from that now with the gas and coal we're using, but under this net zero plan, under some interpretations, that's where we could end up.